Hi, I'm Scott Harney from Esoteric NYC. Welcome to Dreamscape, the liminal space on Crowdcast where we discuss mysteries, esoterica, and the hidden path. And by the hidden path, I mean personal spiritual gnosis. A while back, I wrote a book called Esoteric Guide to New York City. And the book was really dedicated to the far-out spiritual explorers, iconoclasts, and I would even say spiritual outlaws in the occult underground. I am fascinated by people who forge their own way and develop their own unique systems, but within the context of a living tradition. Jon Vermilion is such a person. He's an occultist, a teacher, an author of 2 books published by Aeon Sophia Press, Asayakalaxi and Zachiel, Stargate of Christ. He is also the head of the inner order of Al-Hashashin, a Sufic sorcery order. And of course, Al-Hashashin means it harkens back to the days of Alamut and the assassins. It's really an amazing mystery school with a proven lineage through the lineage holder Shoki Dewan, the sheikh of the order. Jon is interesting because as an occultist, he has embraced both Christ consciousness as well as the magical Islamic current in his occult workings. So, without further ado, let's bring Jon on. Jon, how are you today?
Scott.
How's it
I'm
going?
doing very well. Yeah, thank you for having
Good.
me on.
Thank you for joining us. Yeah, and Jon and I know each other. We've studied together in the order. I'm fascinated by your personal story and your personal gnosis on becoming the teacher you are today. So you've had really like direct spiritual contact with the spiritual world, really since you were a young boy. Maybe you could talk a little bit about your early experiences and how they formed you.
Yeah. I mean, realistically, it does start from, when I was a kid. I can remember still in my head, like, memories of looking outside my eyes as a kid and like laying down. I can still tap into this kind of memoric pathway back there. So I was always very, very aware energetically. I was kind of a colicky baby. I guess you could say I was a colicky kid, but I remember in my head, it's just I was seeing a lot of different things. I was a little more aware of things. As I grew up, even at the age of 4 and 5 years old, I would have to have spiritual symbols around me, in my windows, above my bed, basically to use for protection. That's the only thing that I could hinge it on. I didn't come from a really, I wouldn't really even say a spiritual family per se or a religious family. They were just open to whatever. They were very whatever. So I didn't have really any religious affiliation, so I didn't really have anything to hinge it on. I didn't believe in God in the traditional sense, what I find in religions, you know what I mean, or was told about religions. But I had more of what I would consider a personal relationship with God, knowing that I knew something existed, because how couldn't it, at that point. So I kind of was very aware as a kid. I had what I would consider a near-death experience when I was young, probably around the age of 8, 10, somewhere in there, where I hit my head really hard after choking. I ended up hitting my head actually 3 times on 3 different things. And I was pretty much knocked out of body, and I was on the other side of the veil, and I remember being brought back by a woman in blue, who I know now, who is something that I would actually consider Hecate. So it's like her to me now would be Hecate. That's who is very familiar of an idol or an image in my head per se. But it was very motherly, so I didn't have a very super dark mother vibe from it. It was very motherly. She was like, "Dear, it's not time. It's not time. You got to go back." And I remember her kind of walking me back through what seemed to be blackness, and I remember her just walking me back, and I remember seeing a portal kind of opening, almost looking down at my body that was in the washroom at the time. And she kind of basically just kept kind of pushing me in, it wasn't, didn't want to get in, she kept being like, "No, it's not time. It's not time." I remember her just keep repeating, "It's not time. It's not time. You got to go back." So me fighting in my body, I had like a little seizure moment where I started convulsing on the ground. I was finally came to, of course, bawling my eyes out. I was just a kid, I didn't know what was happening. I was very confused. Everybody was standing around me, and Brought to the hospital, and they said I had a seizure. I never had a seizure before that. I never had a seizure after it. So, I mean, people can say I had a seizure if they want, but what I personally remember is that story. So
that's sort of, it put you into
for a long
these.
time. Yeah, it went on for a really long time because I even had such massive psychic attacks I had such massive migraines that even doctors couldn't figure out what was happening. I was getting horrible dreams and being chased by, reptilian figures in my dreams, and these figures that I would draw out. So I was undergoing a lot of psychic attack when I was a kid. So I finally shut myself down. I just kind of learned to not care, I guess. I don't know how. I just naturally shut myself down. And kind of went to normal, throughout high school and whatnot. But it was the defining moment of when I was around, I think it was the age of 21, when I actually, what I would consider my actual exit point, the death experience that kind of solidified everything.
Yeah, and that was the time when you said you met one of the masters, a being of great light, correct?
I would consider him one of my masters.
Right. Was that the Christ figure, would you say? Or
yeah, I mean, it would be easy for somebody to look at that and say Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't.
Interesting.
I seen that, if you want to transition to that story, I mean, I'm more than open to share that whole story. It's rather interesting. And I don't think I've ever shared it openly, but me and you actually we know each other outside too, so it's kind of open and be nice to share. So if you want me to, I can.
Yeah, that would be great. Sure. I think it would help our listeners.
Yeah. So I was actually, I used to do a lot of music when I was younger. So I went on a musical path, and I did tons musically. And in that time, I was kind of leading a pretty bad life, we'll put it that way. And I had this moment of coming to heart on myself. And I was so far long gone in my perspective, and I remember having this moment where it was just me alone in my apartment. My roommate wasn't there. Nobody was there. That was a rare experience. There's usually people there. And I had a moment where I was in a moment of deep grief and grieving. I was having a very big coming to moment. But all of a sudden I felt a sharp pain at the bottom of my left foot, and a sharp pain that went up into my heart. It traveled up, and it was like, boom. I just felt this like hard shock, and then nothingness. It was pure blackness. And then I had this kind of moment of like feeling like something kind of like move in a sense, like this blackness. And next thing you know, I was standing in this, in my living room. I was standing in my living room. So at this point, I'm looking at my hands. I'm like, oh, I've lucid dreamed before. I knew what astral projection was. This was like different. This was really different. It was very removed, from the actual experiences that I was looking at. And it was to the point where I was with a significant other at the time, and we were having a feud, and I was looking at myself and looking at my hands, and I could see right through them, but something was different. And I was a lot of confusion, and all of a sudden to the right of me I felt this presence. So I looked over to my right, and I seen this glowing figure with multiple layers of light. It looked like almost pure white, like a candle flame. You could imagine like a giant 8-foot candle flame standing in front of you that had a slight, I'm saying slight silhouette of a form. That's what it would look like. It didn't take me back. That was kind of weird to me. I wasn't like jolted back. It was comforting. And I felt like I really knew this being, and this entity or whatever it was to me. I felt I really knew it. I felt this deep connection. And it asked me telepathically. I kind of felt like how it talked to me. I could feel it like almost ripple through my field almost, and it asked me, have you learned anything? And I'm like, I have no clue. I'm so confused right now. And the being said, it came off as a male entity, like a male energy. So I usually call it a he. But he said, you reincarnated to re-experience love. So he said, you reincarnated to re-experience love.
Right.
And from that moment, this big portal of blue opened up, and I went through this tunnel. And through this tunnel, it was you basically seen everything of your life. Like I seen every little minute detail. Not only so much like oh, this happened. I seen if I would have said something different, if I would have done something different. So I didn't just see the reality that happened. I seen the realities that also could have happened if I personally would have chosen to do something or say something, even as simple as feeding somebody that's needing on the side of the road. You know, it was really, I seen it all, and it all happened so fast, but it seemed also like it was like a movie, but it wasn't. You know, it all happened at once. From here, I went through this distant light that grew to be like this gold hue. It was like this golden, shimmering light. And I remember hitting that, and it felt like there was force behind it. You know, it felt like there was like you boom went through it. You know. And on that other end, it was just like, it was just energy. It was not, you know, there was nothing else. I didn't experience anything else except this thing. It was almost like a womb. It had this color of like this orange gold kind of hue, and it was, you were in communication with it. There was others, but there wasn't others, but there were others, but everything was one, but there was a slight separation. And obviously I had some kind of communication with it because I decided to come back. But it basically gave me the feeling that I never had the choice to leave, or I never had the choice to stay. I could come and go as I really wanted to. I remember that, you know, if you could even say took back a feeling from that, other than that, that's kind of what I felt from that. So I felt this very intense free will. You know, it was pure unconditional love, to the point that I feel nobody knows what real love is until they could actually experience such a thing. Otherwise, they're always kind of looking at it through this horizontal, emotional, give, take, you know, type stuff. But realistically, what I experienced in that moment with, you know, you could call it God, Allah, you can name it whatever you want. You can have a personal name with it. You can call it Jim if you really wanted to. You know, as long as there's a deep personal connection, you know what you're talking to. This is, you know, it's unconditional. It doesn't, it's not a judging much.
And that contact put you in touch with your sort of spiritual counsel.
A little bit later, yeah. I mean, I came back very confused and very fractured. I was, you know, I remember slamming down in my body, and I couldn't even open my eyes. Like I couldn't fit in my body. My body hurt. Like it almost like rigor mortis hurt. I don't know how long I was there. You know, I know more about the experience now from other contacts. Like dream contacts and spirit contacts that I've had. But, you know, those kind of started opening up a little bit later, where it made me feel like I was going absolutely mad. You know, there was a moment where I was like, I'm going to check myself into an insane asylum. Like, I gotta talk to somebody, you know?
Well, that's the, when you have these profound Gnostic experiences, it can be very disorienting.
And I was always interested, even when I was 4, I remember having visions of seeing like cathedrals, like almost like these big cathedrals, and me standing inside of these cathedrals. You know, so I always had this very mystical view of the world.
Interesting. Now tell me about Asayakaya. You've described that as a self-help book for the practicing occultist.
I don't really like calling it a grimoire so much, because I'm not trying to get anybody in connection with a spirit per se. You know, so I kind of wage it more on a self-help book. So assayakalaxi to me is more of a way that somebody, if they're heavily fractured, like I was, or they've done a ton of different systems and just don't know up and down anymore, it allows them to kind of reaccumulate themselves and connect themselves to two different polarities again. You know what I mean? It really kind of brings a balancing to it. So I'm not so much trying to get people in touch with the spirit. I'm not saying, oh, you're going to do this on this day and you're going to contact this spirit. It's more of a do this to better yourself as a practitioner, you know, so you can do these certain exercises, certain breathing exercises, meditative visualizations, protections. I think release work is probably the most powerful thing in that book itself, because it allows people to release everything they could think of doing, really. I mean, it's, you know, I hope to be doing some classes on that soon. I'm just specific release work classes and like group classes, because even done at a group thing, it's almost like therapy, but you're just releasing even mundane things at times. So it's very powerful. So that way your energy feels clean, your mind clean, your emotions are clean. And when that's in place, I mean, anything else magically that you want to do, it should be, you know, pinpointed at that point.
So presently, you are working with the Islamic current. So tell me how you ended up working within the framework of Sufism, which is
Well, I mean, it, it's been an undercurrent for a very, very
mhm,
long time. It
right.
wasn't it hasn't been long since I've really tied myself to it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I held a very strong thing of never really tying myself or aligning to something that I was like, I'm this, I'm a Christian, I'm this, I'm
Right.
that. I never wanted to do that. Even when I was younger, even when I am now, Um, so the Quran was actually the first book spiritual text or religious text I read when I was like just starting high school. So I think it was like 13 or
Hmm.
14. It was in my history teacher's classroom. So I remember grabbing it off the thing and he's like, you should read that. And it's like the only book that he had that had any kind of religious connotation to it.
Hmm.
And so I remember reading that, and there's nothing I could really argue with being a
Hmm.
teenager, as limited a view of the world that I had at the time. At a spiritual aspect, there's nothing I could really argue with it. So there's always that first that kind of seep through, and
Hmm.
I didn't really study it. But when I started having really open contact with, people would call them my guides. In the Western world, they
Hmm.
call them guides. I call them my counsel because I know them more as family.
Hmm.
Um, so when they kind of started opening up to me, or I started having more open contact, I kind of needed that open contact coming back from that death experience because
Right.
I was a different person, like
Hmm.
when you're talking about you're merging with your, Katarine double or something like that. It was
Hmm.
very, very intense, so
Right.
the John I am now is not the John I was before that by
Right.
any means, really. So I just take the body now, kind of feeling. So I started having very open contact, but of course, in telepathy started coming through very, very clearly with them at first, which started kind of making me a little scared and little leery. I was like, I'm going crazy, But
Hmm.
through dreams, it was always asserted. Through even waking synchronicities, it was always asserted. So it was just over and over again over years and years. I was like, okay, okay. So when I opened myself up enough to rekindle that connection and stop fearing it and start opening up to it, they would
Hmm.
often say things to me in a different language that I didn't
Hmm.
consciously know.
Uh-oh. Froze.
Feels,
There we go.
but I never knew what the words really meant. So I would write the words down the best I could.
Hmm.
Sometimes they'd come with symbols. I try to write the symbols
Hmm.
down, but generally speaking, I'd find the roots or the words that I was working with or hearing in what I thought sounded kind of like Hebrew or Arabic, and
Hmm.
more of the Semitic languages.
An
It was a
ancient
little bit more
language, right?
guttural. It was the ancient languages.
Mm.
So I started studying Hebrew letters through a little more closely because I thought it was Hebrew, but it was actually Arabic. So I
Hmm.
eventually, down the line, I found out that they were speaking more Arabic. Um, so
Interesting.
that made me realize that the Arabic had a much stronger, thing that I was looking at.
Yeah,
Um,
and I find it interesting because Shoei describes Islam as
Even
the
during Asayakalaxi, because Asayakalaxi was
yeah,
written realistically. Asayakalaxi was written, a while ago. I just recently
right.
released it, so it's an
Hmm.
old book to me. It's old material, but it's really good material for anybody. I still use the
Hmm.
techniques to this day. I
Hmm.
several of the people in the Hashashin Order use those techniques.
Hmm.
Every morning when they wake up or need to do release work. So
Hmm.
it's kind of become a part of something kind of doing. Some of us, if they so
Right.
choose to. Um, so
Yeah.
it's been a part of everything. Then of course Zakael, when I released Zakael, what that really is
Hmm.
it's a Sufi Mandel. It's a mirror. It's a
Right.
vortex. It's a black mirror vortex. You
Right.
see this work heavily within the order and within the Sufi current.
Hmm. Yeah.
Albeit the Zakael is done a little differently, kind of to a
Hmm.
little bit. It's really not that different. It's just working with different symbols and different
Hmm.
Rohani symbols, or what most people in the West would know as like light symbols or light language,
Right.
stuff like that.
Yeah. It's interesting. Islam, especially in occult circles, like Golden Dawn and a lot of these other groups, it doesn't
Hmm.
get the respect it deserves. a lot of the Orientalists say that the Arab world did a good job preserving the teachings of Greek civilization, but they don't realize that, it was Arabic books like the Picatrix and Shams al-Ma'arif, which had a profound impact on some of the great Western occultists,
Oh yeah.
and even Shoti was mentioning, the Rosetta Stone, translating hieroglyphics. The West said, "Oh, we discovered it," but in fact, it was Nuno Mystery who discovered it. Hundreds of years earlier, or even 1,000 years earlier. Yeah. So there's a bit of a, I'm not gonna say racism, but like a superiority feeling, I think, in the West about Islam, where, as Shoti says it, Islam, particularly Sufic Islam, really is the primordial religion, I think.
It is. And
it's interesting.
That's the thing is technically people look at Islam as coming after Christianity,
right? And
sure. So it might be new in that regard, but what it is bringing back the primordial craft.
Right.
Now, over the years, obviously, like everything, you know what I mean. Like you can find that in really any religion, even Buddhism and Taoism and Hinduism. You can find it everywhere, But especially with Islam being slightly considered like the newer, one, it's really not.
Right.
It's bridging all those old things back together into one.
Right.
And it's bringing back this really primordial lineage. It's this primordial. It's even pre-human in that regard.
Right. Which really is pre-Islamic, but the Islamic religion goes back to that, right? When you mention Hecate, in the order, Hecate is an energy, but an energy that goes back to the primordial state, right? Heka, which is an ancient Egyptian goddess, right?
Yep. It was actually even before Ra, and so it's Heka. I think mostly in lore, I think Heka was actually considered more of a solar entity, even though it still embarked both. It was more of that dualistic primordial. So it was, and I find within Islam that, you can sit there and pick apart any religious doctrine and put man's word on it.
Right.
But what's cool, and you can find this even in the Torah, and you have to understand that first of all, the letters and the things that people are speaking and reading within these books is actually a numerical equivalency to it, so you're not just reading words, you're reading formulas. You're literally reading formulas. And anybody that's actually worked with the Quran deeply like that and understands the gematria of vibration behind it and the things behind it, it's very, very powerful. Same with the zikr and all that.
Well, esoterically, of course, is taught in the order every.
Hinged.
I'm sorry.
Arabic is one of the more higher hinged language, into that realm. So it's really close to that. So when you can speak it or study it and use it, even in Hebrew to the point, but I stopped using the Hebrew system because it didn't make total sense to me. It doesn't, I can sit there and talk gematria all day long, but the thing is 22 doesn't work in my cosmology. So. Yeah.
Well, Shoti said that in the past there were 28 letters, supposedly.
Well, yeah. We were talking about that too. Where, Hebrew used to actually have 28 letters, but. Right. But it's still fracturing the system,
Yeah.
Whereas Arabic, they're still hinging on the 28, so you're still talking about the 28 moon mansions. You're talking about you have a more even spread. You can get the 7 and the 4. You get the element. You know what I mean? There's a lot more going on where you can understand it from a numerical value. Plus in the abjad it goes up to 1,000 instead of the 400 in the Hebrew. So I feel it extends the fabric, if you will.
Yeah, and of course, according to the teachings, every letter has its own spirit, and every surah has its own mawakil, they call it, spirit. Speaking of spirit,
that's a lot of stuff that we talk about in the classes too, and we have a lot of people taking classes with us from all around the world, which is amazing to see. I love seeing the diversity from all over the place, and everybody that we're meeting is phenomenal, So it's bringing really cool people to learn really cool information that they can't
Yeah,
find anywhere else. You're not going to
that's
find this
true.
stuff in books unless
Yeah,
you can read Arabic really well and have access to the
yeah,
books.
and
But what's nice about the Hashashin Order is we actually hold it through lineage through you
right.
know Shauki and but I'm humble enough to be able to be in being able to talk about it and also help bring it to the light and
Yeah.
help teach the classes and guide the process along. So
And speaking of books, one of the big projects you have is translating Arabic grimoires, rare Arabic grimoires that have never been translated before from
yep.
Arabic into English. And actually, and I know for a fact, having lived in the Middle East, these books are really hard to find.
They are.
And it's
Yep.
amazing what you guys are doing. So, how many books are you thinking of? Are you actually planning on translating?
You know, it's a process. We don't. I wouldn't say we have a set number. We're not saying we're going to do 5
Mm,
or 10 or you know what I mean. We're
right.
we're, we're taking it one by one, and we're kind of doing it as a way to know, what
Mm,
really think people would really like to see first. Because
right.
there's a gold mine
Right. That's
there.
true. Now,
And we're
speaking.
trying to kind of highlight books that we find very effective for
Right.
even our current.
Mm,
Because our current is very, I wouldn't say niche, but it's the classes are intense and the information can be
mm,
intense and it's very practical
right.
and people got to be doing the work, and
Yeah.
it's a modern day mystery school teaching or the real
Mm,
mystery. We're
right.
not
Um, and
teaching the normal.
yeah, no, definitely. No, it's definitely,
Yeah.
even they even say
You
a
know
lot of
this.
witchcraft.
You've
Yeah.
been in it. You know
Yeah.
this.
Well, even a lot of witchcraft actually comes from North Africa. A lot of people don't realize that. The
Yeah. Oh,
Thame and the horned god and all that. A lot of it, there's a little bit of a controversy, but a lot of it they've traced back to Morocco.
mm-hmm.
A lot of the
Yep.
it Morocco through, then it go through Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
You
but in
you
it,
even look in like other cultures, and the
yeah,
Arabian culture is so rich, and you
hmm
look at it, and it's so full of magic, and
hmm
all these amazing buildings and architecture, and you find that even in like movies like Aladdin, and even anybody that's
right,
depicting any form of Arabian culture, they're always hinting at the mysticism behind the
right,
thing. To me,
yeah,
at least coming from a Western mind or a Western world, I have more of an Eastern mind. So I'm an Eastern mind
hmm
in a Western world. So I'm seeing these things and I can see it depicted in the Western world. It's like, well, you guys are hinting at these mystical coordinations to this.
right.
And it's because the culture is immersed in that.
What I find interesting, having lived in the Middle East and married into a Middle Eastern family,
Mm-hmm.
um, the jinn, okay, and it's hard to talk about Islamic magic without talking about the jinn, but
Right.
in the West we're skeptical, even though
Mm-hmm.
we believe in ghosts, but it's always like, oh, is it really there? It's matter of fact, the jinn exist.
Yeah.
They did this, they did, and it seems like, I don't know, maybe it's that belief system, but the liminal space is actually, like, that space between worlds is actually thinner, I feel,
It is.
in those
Yeah.
cultures than it is here, particularly
Mm-hmm.
in Egypt. So tell me a little bit about the jinn. And I know you were known for a while back talking about ETs, and you used to go on various radio shows to talk about UFOs. And tell
Mm-hmm.
me a little bit about the connection between the jinn and ETs.
Mm-hmm. Well, first we'd have to understand what a Jinn is and what an ET is. So,
Hmm
first, when I talk about ETs or I say the term ET, I'm not talking about an alien. I'm
hmm
talking about, I'm not talking about a physical creature. I'm not talking about a physical creature from another planet. If I'm talking about that, I'm talking about an alien. If we went to Mars, we'd technically be an alien. So, um, ETs, I usually split the two. And I always use the term ET and ETI over than Jinn, even though I knew, you know, realistically the Jinn are the same thing in my eyes. So I used the term ET and ETI to kind of take away the stigma that the word Jinn has. You say Jinn and it's almost like saying a racial slur. People are like, oh, they're evil, they're mean, they're bad, and that's like saying human. You know, like what if you said human to something? Oh, they're bad. They're all bad. No, I'm Scott. No, I'm
Right.
You're not bad.
It's all different types. That's true.
Right. There's all different types. So let
Right.
me classify what I consider an ET. Is an ET is an
Mm-hmm.
energy, a non-localized energy or entity outside of physical space. So these are interdimensional entities that can, yes, interact with the sublevels around them. Some of them are very advanced.
Right.
Some of them are horrible beings that could be considered demonic. You know what I mean? But they're just beings that live outside of the spectrum that we actually see. So I'm not even
Right.
saying that they live on Venus. I'm not even saying that they live in a different galaxy. For the most part. Sure, we can put a physical place on it if we wanted to, but I want people to take a step back from the physical and look at it more of an interdimensional thing.
Right.
I'm not saying that people that have physical experience of physically being taken on a ship. I 100% believe that too, because I've seen some stuff. So it's like, but in the interdimensional, it takes away this. It takes away that physicalness and brings it into this very broad, multi-spectrum view of dimensionality. So they're different vibrational beings on different vibrational planes. Generally speaking, with an ET, there's different races. They all live pretty much by free will. They have different technological advancements. They have different religions, you know what I mean, from Christianity to Islam to, you could throw a religion, they have it, and plus other ones that they won't do. They take on different forms, so we're talking about realistically, we're talking about this very multiple array of a non-visual reality that we can't physically see for the most part.
Yeah, I noticed when I was
in the end, let's talk about what a Jinn is. And realistically, if you edit this program, you could go back and just edit what I just said and place it on what a Jinn is.
Right.
So there's not a lot of difference.
Right.
Now, yes, there's certain Jinn that will be more electrical, maybe giving off the electrical signals from your lamps, or there's a lot to it. So it's not so much. It's better to look at it as inorganic and organic. We're organic beings.
Right. And that you consider the Jinn inorganic beings.
Yeah. I know a certain race that I've interacted with, which a lot of people would know as the Greys.
Right.
That's a subject we could talk about for 3 days if you wanted to. But
so do you consider the Greys?
The ones that I've seen and affiliated with, they're more sulfur based. Where we would be more, carbon based beings. We're carbon based beings. They're sulfur based.
So you consider the Greys a race of Jinn?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, I'm going to ask a question that's sort of outside the realm of this. What do you think of David Icke about the reptilians? Is he talking about Jinn, and what is he talking about?
There's a lot to that. I think David Icke's work's actually, he's seeing stuff, he's putting stuff together, you know what I mean? But again, a lot of people hinge so much back on their first shadow and their first aspect of imagination, or that the reptilians are out to get the whole world. They jump on these things. I know that race of beings to be a certain, sometimes rather hostile ET race or type of race. Yes.
Right.
Are they all like that? No, they have so many different hierarchies to them.
Right.
A spirit that I work with closely, he's reptilian. If somebody else worked with him, they'd probably be frightened as all hell. There's no doubt, because I know him as a real being. Like, this is a real living being. So, even so, I was able to see different sides of that. Of that energy.
Right.
They're not all negative, wanting to siphon people's energy and control the world and all that kind of stuff. It's even, everybody has their bad apples, and sometimes the bad apples are a hell of a lot more powerful than other ones. We can see that with humans.
Right.
Our bad apples have the power of money.
Right. And so his whole theory is that the reptilians are actually controlling world events, but do you see this, or?
There's a lot of beings controlling a lot of different things, how beings attach to different people. I mean, you can see it around the whole world. I've seen just normal people become possessed and attached, you know. So you can see it. You can imagine the type of beings that are wanting to attach themselves to political leaders. You can imagine the type of beings that are like, hey, I want in. Or in another regard, what kind of beings are being ritually brought in to be bred into families? You know, like what do they know? You know, I'm not going to get too conspiratorial with it, you know, but what do the families that have been ruling forever, you know? You know, they might know things that the normal people don't know too. You know, so it's, you know, I can't really blame them. You know, I know as much from the reptilian side of things is, you know, physically, in a sense, their bodies, you know, they don't have to change their reptoids. You know, so if you're going to look at perfected DNA that never has to change.
Right.
Pretty.
When I was in Pakistan, it was interesting that a lot of the Sufis said some of the jinn were Muslim, some of the jinn were Christian, but the jinn would actually come to zikrs, and actually at some point they could be pointed out, like they could actually take a physical form, you know, which I find pretty amazing. And it was sort of like there was like a matter of fact, that's a jinn, and they come out and they'll buy bread, and so you think there's a truth to that then?
Yeah, I mean, from my experiences, I mean, I've experienced some pretty wild things, you know, in and out of workings. I would I kind of consider my, you know, and I welcome it with my counsel. They're a little more infiltrated with me. I don't sit and just do a working to talk to my, you know, what I consider my family. You know, I don't have to sit there and do this crazy invocation thing all the time. But, you know, they're a little more infiltrative, you know, and I've had full on physical experiences with that. Yeah. You know, where I could feel them touching my head, you know, like full on. I could see the hand, you know, I could feel the hand, the claw, I mean, the talon or whatever you wanted to call it. I could feel all that, you know, very physically, and they're standing right in front of me, you know.
And that's working in the order, correct?
Would other people be able to see that, though? That's what I'm asking you. If you were in that same room with me in that experience, would you have been able to see it? So that's why we're talking about this vibrational spectrum that is really conducive to the person's own vibration or frequency within their mind, you know?
Right.
How something can be seen by one person and can't be seen by another.
Right.
You know, or overlaid.
Now you've said before that the order itself does work with jinn, correct? Or works with different type of spirits.
We work with jinn operation. We teach angelic operation and demonic operation. So it's literally the whole gamut. We're not singling out just jinn. We, you know, the spirits that I work with would be considered angels to some people. Right. You know, so what's the distinction? You know, an angelic being is something that holds themselves to that status. An angelic being could be someone that's not maybe an angel, but they're looking up at the angel in awe and being like, I want to be that, you know, or their next stage of evolution, if you will.
Interesting. Yeah. You know, but the nice thing about...
It says very clearly that you know, the jinn are separated from angels. You know, there's angels and there's jinn and there's humans.
Right. But the powerful thing about the order is that it's able to dial in that energy in a very specific way.
Very much so, yeah.
The sigils and the incense and the oils and the...
Yeah, I mean, it's
very interesting.
It hits every facet, for sure. We definitely don't want to cut any stones. We take this work very very professionally, you know, because we live it. We work it, you know. We literally live and breathe it. So it's like when other people can come in and take a class and get the same kind of experience and be like, oh man, I'm putting my stuff together, you know, I'm putting my wheelhouse together. This is amazing, you know. And then being able to open their wheelhouse up more and be able to get even more and more and more and more. And next thing you know, they're able to connect with their Kareem, their double, and they're having these full-on spirit interactions, you know, what they want. We're not trying to play guessing games. You know what I'm saying? We're not trying to play guessing games where we go into a room and say blah 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 and hope something happens. No, we don't want to play guessing games. This is actual science.
The Korean, you mentioned the Korean, and that's a really important, I think, aspect of the occult teachings. You want to explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit.
It's also something that was very big in Pakistan occultism, and essentially it's the body double, you know, and it's a double that you can actually, if you do the right workings, you can actually meet physically and in the dream state.
Yep.
The scary thing is, like, who is more real? Is the double or yourself? And it gets to all that's how people get fractured.
The other day is if the Qur'an is dreaming.
That's a concept a lot of people couldn't take, because it fractures your sense of self. Right.
Right. And I've had a lot of moments of that where, I've had, I've had those experiences. So it's like, I know what it's like to think that, and what's weird is maybe I'm just that sadistic in that way, I guess, but that brings comfort to me a little bit.
Right.
It does to me, because I used to have, I still dream, but back when this was all first starting to really rev up, I mean, the dreams were so nonstop. I'd close my eyes, I could leave my body and go do whatever I wanted. I was so ungrounded to the point where I could just leave body. I'd be knocked out of body really easily.
Right.
So it was really easy. So I could bring it back, pages and pages and pages in my dream dictionary.
Right.
All these experiences and trainings and teachings. And, so it's, the dreaming is so powerful. So even when you can meet your Qur'an in the dream, you even have that idea that, it's dreaming me. I think that's really cool. And I think, people can sit there and think about that for a few years and still get that, like, oof.
Like, that's true.
People got to ask themselves, like, who are you when you fall asleep? Are you Scott when you fall asleep, Scott? Right.
And it's like also Roger Williamson. If you've read his works, he wrote Lucifer Diaries.
I think I might actually have some of his books now.
Yeah, Howling at the Sky. It deals with Cairo, but he has a story where he was involved in goetic invocations and evoking goetic beings, and then one day he got evoked. Like, in other words, they did a working where they actually invoked him into their world. I've been channeled. This was a while ago. This is like probably quite a while ago. But I was channeled by another entity once, another being. Wow. Yeah.
And the being wasn't human. That's a thing. The being wasn't human. So I was like channeled by this entity, and I was like, oh wow, this is the craziest thing. It was because it was very forceful. Like I completely lost, myself. It was like I was being knocked out of my body, basically, or pulled out of my body by this entity. It was a good conversation. It was it was even though I was a little like, what are you doing? I can understand. And that's why when people just go willy-nilly and just calling spirits after spirits after spirits after spirits, like if somebody was calling me like that, oh my God, I couldn't imagine. So it's, if somebody was constantly channeling me or constantly wanting that, like it's, just stop bothering them. Get to know yourself.
So we have a question. This is a good one. Hey, Ant, are the Goetia considered jinn?
In my mind, yeah, because in our system we talk about the 72 as well. We talk about the 99. We talk about these things, and we have them so tightly dialed in and precise. You can even look at the. I personally look at the Hindu gods as jinn. Right. Kali is a very powerful jinn in Sufic lore.
Yes.
So it's is it an angel? Like, if it's not an angel, it's probably going to be a jinn or some other, or an ET or ETI or whatever you want to call it. If it's a being outside of you and humanoid living in a different perspective in nature, in existence, you can consider it really a jinn. Now, what kind? What's its intentions? What's its history? Where's its lineage? What's because you go back into it, it's genetics do still play a part in them too. Right.
No, definitely. So we have a couple of questions, actually. Let's see. First question: will assayakalaxi be back in stock anytime soon? And that's
yes. I'm actually working on revising it a bit and expanding it because I just over the past while of answering questions and about the book and also putting out new material and all this kind of stuff. I just feel it'd be good to expand on some of the things and give a broader spectrum of that process and kind of put a little bit more release work in it. And it'll be the same book. The skeleton itself will be the same book, but I'm hoping to expand it quite a bit and make it a little bit more readily available for everybody and even grandma to get it if they need it.
Yeah, because both of your books are currently out of print, right? Zakiel
Yeah,
also,
sold out.
and they're selling for a lot of money on the occult book market. Correct? Yeah, yeah. The sort of collector's items, definitely.
It happened quick. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the
Secondhand market
yeah,
in the occult is rather interesting because you can buy a
right,
$75 book, and next thing you know, it's $600. You're like, wait a minute, if I
right.
would have bought this a year ago.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know a lot of people buy those books to put them on the shelves,
Right.
because they're really pretty, and I want more people to be able to open those books and
Right.
utilize them, not just use them as pretty centerpieces, but learn from
Right.
them, grow from them.
Yeah, definitely. The other question is, where can someone in the West, means me in New York City, learn Islamic mysticism from a reputable and authentic source? Well, I mean,
Sufi
it's an obvious
Sorcery, Al-Hashim,
fact.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Right.
There. Here's
I'm
the
gonna
thing.
put the I'm gonna put the
you can go
website
find
on.
other. What's that?
One second. I'm gonna put the website of the Sufic Sorcery on. One second.
Yeah, and
can
show
do
Al-Hashashin too,
Yeah.
in the order of Al-Hashim.
Yeah. One second. Then we could do this. Here we go.
People can go and
Sufi
look at other
Sorcery.
Sufi, things and whatnot, but it's just they don't have like the actual tariqa. It's the actual system behind it, the teachings that are solid,
Right.
especially when it comes to that primordial. So the classes
Right.
are really where it's at. This is where the bulk of and this is the classes. I feel, if people are doing spiritual tourism and just wanting to study, that's great. They're definitely more apt for people that are really want to dive into their own personal cosmology and awareness with what's happening around them.
Right.
Yep. So that's the
There's
Order
a lot
of
of
Al-Hashashin
Hashashin.
website. We just released that again not too long ago, but you can sign up for. Really realistically, we're trying to build this very large forum where people in the inner order and the outer order and people doing classes can have access to a ton of information at their fingertips.
Right.
And we will
That's
have
great.
soon we will have workings for the outer order to be able to start partaking in as we do them too, certain occult workings and Sufic workings and Sufic rituals. And that's my personal website.
It's
Yeah.
your personal website, the Violet Gateway. Yep. And
.com.
.com. And let me see. Let me get this back here. Here we go. And you're working, an exciting issue is that you're working on a new book related to the Sufi current called Al-Faq on Arabic gematria. You want to tell us a
Al-Faq,
bit
a
about that?
treatise. Yeah, it's called Al-Faq, a treatise on Arabic gematria and magic squares, I guess you could say in the subtitle. I've always been a really big numbers guy. I love numbers, and I was really good at math when I was a kid. I was just a whiz at math, so I like numbers. And it's not so much math; it's so much more of what numbers reveal about the nature of reality. So
Right.
you can look at older texts of Agrippa, and throw a couple others that talk about the magic squares and stuff and the planetary seals. But you never get told of what to really do with them. You don't get told how they work, what you can do with them, what they're really there
Right.
for, and how they're used as an actual tool. Luckily, I can bring that to the light. So I've been working on putting together a book. We're pretty much in the editing phase right now about the whole process. So my intention is that if anybody reads the book, they can pick up this book and start actually being able to build their own squares, understand how they work, how they operationally work, and how they can utilize them and bring them into their own practice, and literally
Right.
open up gates and portals to actual real experience. It's what I call bringing like your first attention, your imagination, all that kind of stuff. You start getting into more
Right.
of that second attention gnosis. You start getting more actual proof, and something with Al-Faq, it's like a needle. You have to be so precise with it. Like if
Right.
anything's out of it, you know what I mean? You're not hitting the same frequency. It's like a dial. You're turning in on a radio station. If the radio station's on 93.8 and you're on 93.7, you're not really on that station. So I look
Right.
at it a lot like that, and it's a very passionate subject to me. So it's open, tons of stuff realistically in my mind about things. So I'm glad to be able to bring it out and give people at least a deeper look into those mysteries. And this stuff hasn't been talked about in a very, very long time. It's no book that's going to be talking about this information.
Right. And when it's exciting news. When do you expect it to be finished and published?
I don't like rushing good things, but we are kind of shooting for like the second quarter of this year.
Wonderful. That's great.
And that will be released through the order as well, so it'll be an actual order text. So,
wow.
Yeah.
It's exciting. Any other new news about the order? About the
just released the new website. We did some update.
Al-Hashashin.
Heed of the call and feeling that, so we're really happy about that. But as of right now, it's all going forward, and we're doing what we're doing. So we're just glad people are partaking also in the well of knowledge that we can bring. So.
Right. That's great. Let me see if there's any other questions. Let's see where we are. No, it looks like, no other questions right now. But I think it's been really fascinating to talk to you.
Yeah, as well, Scott. Always.
Yeah, definitely. Any other points you want to bring up while we're on air?
Yeah. I mean, if anybody's interested in actually knowing more, or even just reaching out and just talking about what we're offering or whatnot, it's not my intention to want to be flashy and be like, do this, buy this. It's not our intention for that. It's something that we're offering that is, the classes aren't your 2-hour class, and you go home and you're done. This is several weeks. It's
intense
a
work.
Full on curriculum, and you get certificates for showing your your progress and your actual mastering of the subject too. So it's really looking at it like a school. We want people to learn to apply to their own thing. Now, do you have to be a Sufi? No. You don't have to be a Sufi. You don't have to even be Islamic. You don't have to be a Christian. You don't have to be really anything. We're talking primordial, way back primordial. But it does take an open mind, so, and it definitely takes a open will as well if people want to go very deep with it.
Right. And tell me a little bit how you met Shoki. I mean, you ended up in the same city, and you consider yourselves as having worked in previous incarnations together.
Yeah, I mean, the feeling's definitely there. It's definitely a connection that's not, just a normal, hey, I met you here, now we're friends type feeling, those kind of people that you meet the first time and you're like, oh, I know you, like I've felt like I've met you before, but sometimes those instances are even like more stronger,
Right.
But we have met over a book, no surprise, we like our grimoires and stuff, but we met over a book. I like to think, there's some other force involved with it, of course. But yeah, we just, when we really, showed what we were working on, it was evident that we were pinpointing the same things.
Really working the same current. And I think even the cultists Sabbatai and some of these groups are really working in similar currents, correct? Maybe you want to talk a little bit about that.
In their artwork, they can say that there's no Arabic or Sufi connection to it. I don't know what their stance is on it all, but they could say that. But I mean, it's right there. Whatever you want to call it, the spirit within the work itself is definitely coming from that. So you can see
Andrew Chumley's Andrew Chumley's book Kutub is it's pretty much explicitly Arabic.
quite Arabic Sufism and stuff.
Right.
And there should be an understanding between Sufism and what we're doing and what most people would consider Sufism, or like behavioral Sufism. Yes, there's behavioral practices to anything. People want to be a good person. People, whatever. The behavioral aspect, yes. So we're not so much the behavioral Sufi. We're not talking about those. We're talking about the mysteries. We're talking about the actual enlightened mysteries of the science of wisdom and God.
Right. Yeah. No, definitely. And it's interesting. Your book, Zachiel the Stargate Chris, does focus on mirror magic, and mirror magic is a big part of the curriculum. I know that.
We like our mirrors. There's a lot that goes in to a mirror, you know, and it's not only just a scrying mirror, you know, it's not just for scrying, you know, and there's so much that can be interfaced with in that kind of environment, you know.
Exactly. Yeah. It's interesting.
Even normal mirrors, you know. I remember I read in a book a long time ago that there's some psychologist that said never take, you know, psychedelics or entheogens and stare at yourself in a mirror. You know? Right. But I also used to do mirror meditations where I'd stand in front of a normal mirror and light candles, you know, and there's you see that stuff in movies where people are saying, you know, Candyman, you know, in a mirror. You know what I mean? They're saying these things in a mirror. So the mirrors are evident to be able to create that perceptual switch and that perceptual switch, you know, because if you know how to do it properly, it can yield quite amazing results.
Yeah, and it is a portal into a different dimension.
And that's why it's the Stargate of Christ that I talk about in that book, because how I seen it and was given it by the Spirit was it looked like a Stargate. Like it looked almost like if you watch the movie Stargate, that's it was huge, you know, but it was this deep black, almost breathing mirror looking thing with a bunch of symbols around it. So
yeah. And I find it interesting that in a lot of the traditional African religions, like Santeros, sometimes they will cover mirrors in a house that has a lot of activity in it. We have a question.
I cover mine. Yeah, I cover mine here and there, but I also keep it pretty wide open because enter at your own risk.
Yeah, exactly. Right. We have a question. What is the Mandel?
The Mandel is like there's a couple things. So you can look at a Mandel as just a working portal or a working mirror that you're working with. With our current, we like to have people create this when they start taking classes so they can start interfacing with the deeper realities and creating more of a subconscious root. So within the curriculum, we use it a lot to strengthen people's psychic perception, yes, but also get in touch with those deeper layers, deeper dream layers, deeper connection to their shadow or the Qadarin. So there's a lot of work involved with it. You know, it's not like you're just going to sit in front of, you don't just sit in the front of the mirror and hope something comes through, you know. That's not what I'm saying as a Mandel. So it's not just a reflective surface that you're not using. The Mandel is a specific tool that you're working with the Sufic current to be able to create those perceptual shifts. So when we're talking about the Mandel, we're talking about generally the black mirrors that we're using.
Right.
Now, there's different ones. Yes, there's smaller ones. There's bigger ones. There's portals. There's vortexes. You know, depending on where somebody's at within the curriculum and how deep they want to go is up to them.
And sometimes there are Arabic letters written on them. Right.
We are but the guides to give people their desires within their own path. You know, whether it's Buddhism, Hinduism, whatever.
We have a comment from Erica. Every time I write what someone will call light language, I can see that the script is rooted in Islamic. It's very cool to have you post about the classes.
Very cool. Yeah. And, you know, and one of the questions I would ask her, you know, I don't know if she can even reply here. So, is when you write light language, are you doing it when you're writing it? Are you writing it left to right, or are you writing it right to left? You know, and that's something to definitely ask yourself in the process.
Right.
You know, it's very important because, I mean, look at Arabic and other Semitic writing. You know, it's all right to left, and there's a definite reason for that.
Right. Yeah. Well, if anyone wants to come on, we're hitting the top of the hour. If anyone wants to come on and ask a live question, I'm going to put the eCam link in there.
Oh, cool. You can do that.
Yeah. We also have. Buffo the Seeker. No questions, but I'm grateful for the knowledge experience being shared and feeling the push to simply do the work.
Awesome. Thank you.
That's good. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and Anthony Russell, fascinated by this and curious to learn more. Left. Yeah. So Erica says left to right and at an angle.
Okay, left to right at an angle. Okay. See put
no,
out the intention
I'm sorry.
And see what comes through.
It says no. 1 second. It says no. Oh, no. Well, yeah, it says left to right in an angle. I don't know why she's saying no. Maybe she doesn't want to come on. Sorry, I'm sorry. Right to left. Okay.
Oh, right to left? Okay,
right
to left.
To left.
Great.
Yeah, that's
right
Arabic. Yeah.
Yeah, Arabic's written right to left. And this really comes down to where the energy is coming from. You know, how's it tying in? You know, whereas I look at the brain as right brain, left brain. You have your pineal gland. You know, I look at it very
Right.
triangular in that regard. Whether people want to throw stones at it or not, that's the way I navigate my own consciousness. So when I'm pulling from my right brain, I'm bringing it up from the right to left, you know, and I've done both, you know. The Rohani is really what we're talking about when we're talking about light language and light letters. You know, we in Rohani, we teach people that are doing this naturally. They don't know what they're doing. They're like, man, I got these sheets of paper all over the place, you know, I have all this script everywhere, you know, I don't know what it means, I don't know what it's doing, I know what I'm feeling, but I don't know what's happening, you know. And you see this everywhere, and it's like, okay, well, let's gather, let's put it together, you know. Let's put it together and put your place in it. You know, we want everybody gets to build really their own workable system with themselves. You know, it's you know, something like Enochian wouldn't work for me because it doesn't make sense, because it's not working geometrically the way that I think it should. You know, I don't think it would work that way. You know, so they're not saying that there's not power behind it, you know, for an individual that would tie to that, you know, but how much power could be had potentially somewhere else in a tighter system, you know, something that's not from 1500 years ago, but something that you can come and meet me. You can meet me, you can meet the people, you know, and we can actually physically interact with people and drink and from the well of, you know, and break bread. You know, that's a tradition that you're not going to find in a lot of places. It's lost, you know? So it's a lot more high schooly in certain other aspects in other orders or whatever, you know, and we're completely void of that. We're here to do work. We only want to do work, and that's what we're all here for, because we have a common vision of becoming better practitioners and better, you know, within our own craft.
I think part of the Sufi current is, and this is also from other Sufis that I know, is adab, which is manners, and it's the way of interacting with others, and breaking bread is one of those.
It is,
and even Islam is considered like. You know, how do we, what's the adab? What is the way that we actually deal with the creator? You know, like how we wash and we, you know, there's a very specific ritual. But you're right, part of the Sufi order and part of the order of Hashashin is breaking bread. And
people look at the Islamic culture and be like, oh, they wash their arms, but why? Like, what is the purpose? You know, we're here to tell you why and how this works and why it's working this way, you know. Salat is a phenomenal practice, you know. I think that's a paramount practice, whether somebody is a Muslim or not. It's just a very, very good energetic practice to be able to connect to source.
Right. And also the energy centers, and they get into that in the course. We have another comment from Faith. I write light language too, Erica. Right to left as well. It's refreshing to hear someone else is writing. Quick comment.
She does good work.
Oh, cool. Quick, you know, Anthony Russell mentioned before about, you know, could you have heard Aramaic as opposed to Arabic? It just struck.
Yes. Yeah, I don't say that because I don't know Aramaic.
Right.
I know a lot more Arabic, and there's definitely a lot of connection there to the Aramaic too. But I think Aramaic is definitely one of the ancient languages, yes, and I think that's also been lost in translation.
Yeah. I find it interesting. I had a friend in Afghanistan who talked about the people who live in the caves there, and evidently there's an ancient race of people who speak ancient Hebrew. Like, it's not even Hebrew; it's like the ancient Hebrew. They call them, and they're you know, some people believe it, some people don't. But they're, you know, there's been documented cases where they're giants. They're called Nephilim. Who? But it's interesting. Their language is that ancient, like you know, like, you know, mixed between Aramaic, Arabic, and I guess with Hebrew.
People are too focused on going to Mars and the moon and all these other places, but they don't realize that all these things are here, right beside us. You know, there's no more truth than that, and if people don't see that, that's okay. Some people don't want to see that. You know, it can be frightening. You know, it can be, and you know. But I think the fear comes from the persons themselves. You know, it's not like, you know, not saying that there's not some bad entities out there, but a lot of those things can be overcome by overcoming your own fear, you know, and standing within your own self, you know.
And Anthony says there's a Coptic church on 87th and West Avenue that performs their services in Aramaic. Interesting.
Oh, cool.
Still, yeah, it is still spoken in parts of Syria, right?
It is, yeah.
But
yeah, it's not a dead language like people think it is. It's just it's not widely used anymore.
Right.
It's a little harder to get to. And the thing with it comes more from these languages are more of an oral tradition teachings anyway. And that's one reason why we like to do what we do and the way we do it is because we like to orally give the information rather than just writing all these PDFs or writing all these books after books after books after books and filling pages with tons of words. When you get so much more out of the oral tradition and the polychronic viewpoint of it,
right,
rather than just looking at things from that linear, bull, bull.
And it's a direct experience. It's direct gnosis. I mean, that's what you're getting in the context of a tradition. So,
correct.
To keep you on the Sirat al-Mustaqim, the straight path, because you can fall off. It's great.
It's cool because we open ourselves to anybody that wants to come partake. Realistically, you don't even have to take classes. You don't even have to affiliate. Nothing. If you want to talk to mysteries and talk beliefs and experiences, we love that. That we think that's how things keep living. And that's the best way to hand down any kind of experience or any kind of teaching is that direct interface. If you don't have that direct interface, we're just talking to a computer. Right.
Great. And I'm going to put Sufic Sorcery in the chat as well. Sufic Sorcery. And Shogi has some great videos on YouTube as well. He talks about the Korean. He talks about
sorcery videos, lots of lore and great video about the Qadarin. If anybody wants to know about it more, the video on the Qadarin is very, very powerful and important information.
Yeah. And to finish up, you also offer, and on your website, you also offer services. You do work with people. You want to talk a little bit about what you do offer?
Yeah. I'll talk about a couple. Some I do, personalization, depending on what people need. One of my favorites is a name analysis where basically I take somebody's name and throw it into numbers and tons of different colors and in my own working. It's a type of remote viewing that I have in place where I don't only just work out in somebody's name and what they are, but I'm also remote viewing certain scenes or events within their life that I can highlight within it. So I'm telling, basically I spread somebody out on a piece of paper, several pieces of paper of their conscious mind, their subconscious mind, and their super conscious mind. And at that point, I kind of get a nice viewpoint of who and what they are, and I'm able to show that at a very deep level to them. And sometimes I go over nutrition with it because I am actually a trained nutritionist and kinesiologist, so I've done those trainings. So I like to work with the body and understand the body. So I do that and that as well. I offer a occult nutrition. Basically, if anybody wants to know what nutrition is best for them, for their practice, and to get where they need to be energetically, I also do that as well. And you can check out violetgateway.com and see all the other ones. I try not to offer it strong ones. I don't want to just water it down and but they can be pretty heavy sometimes for people.
Yeah, I just put the violetgateway.com in the chat. I have one more last comment here from Nathan. I've been working through assayakalaxi every day for a good few months now, and I have to say it has cracked me wide open to different energies. Not only am I experiencing more physical energy, but my spiritual energy is stronger than ever, which has also helped strongly facilitate my connection to the numinous through the art of spiritual gnosis. So thank you very much, John. That's great.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great system, definitely. So, well, John, really appreciate.
No one's gonna find anything like that in the occult. They're not. I find a lot of the occult information to be very, very fracturing to people's psyche. And it's to the point now where I'm not going to believe in Jesus. I'm going to believe in Satan. They're just going to put a another idol up. Oh, this time I'm worshiping Hecate. They're changing the idol. They're changing the mask. They're changing the mask.
Right.
They're worshiping the same energy in different masks, and it's just so fracturing.
Right. Right. And that's right. Rather than getting down to the primordial.
Yeah. Could you imagine
energies,
waking up every morning, Scott, and looking in the mirror and saying that you're now Joe, and the next day now Phil?
Well,
you'd start being like, who am I? Who are you in the end praying to and worshiping or idolizing or using as a form of reflection, I guess.
Yeah, a lot of times, I don't want to criticize other groups, but a lot of times the groups still say, okay, I'm not a Christian anymore, and they'll adopt maybe a pagan deity, but really, at the end of the day, they've substituted to the pagan deity, and it's like church again, in a way. It's the same sort of way of dealing with, worship as opposed to, like Anthony Russell used to say back in the day, during, in the days of the Greeks, they would, sometimes threaten the deities. They would, threaten to bury the statues upside down. It was a whole different dynamic between some of these deities and.
Look at Muhammad, and he, smashing all the idols.
Right.
That's honorable, very honorable thing.
So you don't believe, well, except for the one that was the statue of Mary.
Right, of Mary.
Right.
And there's a lot to that, and people don't know it. People don't know the Quran and Islam. They talk about Mary a lot more than the Bible does.
Right. Yeah, there's a whole surah dedicated to it.
Jesus or Isa is a very, very prominent figure still in Islam.
Right. But and that is part of it. I think it's also symbolic as a way of smashing the idols, because you're actually trying to get at the primordial energy of these.
You can't put, and it's coming from my experience. Even at my purest experience that I've had, I still didn't see God as a thing. It was just this. It was just this giving, and it was just this force. You know what I mean? So it's just, I don't. It's hard for me to put an image on God, because everywhere I look, I basically see God. I can see it in the bottle I'm drinking. It's even at the most mundane level. To me, this bottle has a name. If it's existing outside of that primordial thing, there's something behind this that is creating this. So there's an energy behind it, and that's why herbs and incenses and oils. It's so important, because what's behind it, what soul, what energy, what role is behind that, tied to it. It's very important. And if anybody buys oils, on our websites or incense, what we list there is the spirits that it's connected to. So inside, we tell the people what the spirits are. We give the names and the role behind it. So we're not like trying to. We're it's really full disclosure in the things.
Right. In fact, I'm going to get a Kareen. Actually tomorrow I'm going to buy the Kareen oil. Which, what does it smell like? I'm curious. Is it sweet or?
It smells like home, Scott.
Oh, okay. That's good. Well, you've sold me. I'll definitely get it now. Okay. Great.
Yes, and of course, if people don't know, that's actually connected to Saturn. So that is an oil that's connected to Saturn and connected to the Kareen as well. And there's a lot of information on the website that people can find out about that oil and what it does and the names and kind of how it's made.
Yeah.
Very, very powerful stuff. I use the oils all the time. I got one here that I've used quite a bit of. It's obviously not full anymore, but this one's really good. I really love this one. They're all good, and we actually use all of, we actually use these oils. We don't. It's not so much making them for other people, we're making them for ourselves because we like to use them and they work really well, because it's tied to a real effect.
Right. Yeah, no, and I know when I lived in Saudi Arabia, attar was huge. Everyone, it was a part of the spiritual life there. So,
yeah, and plus oud smells great. Don't get me wrong.
Oud is,
attar is everywhere. So we're not working with that type of attar. We're working with, an actual
planetary or.
Well, it's distilling the actual roll from the oils in the distillation process. And it's not done by any heat. It's all cold pressed, it's all cold distilled, so we can't make a ton of it. It's not like a mass produced thing. This is everything we do is very, very hands on, and we just made incense, and we had Laban and frankincense and Arabic gum like stuck in our hands. You know, we're hand making this
Right.
stuff. We're, you know, we're not just sitting there willy nilly doing it. You know, and we'll be releasing some videos of that process too, and release the incense. And it's
That's
very
great.
very interesting, powerful process.
And we have Buffo the Seeker says, reminds me how I was explaining to a friend earlier today the significance behind the 99 names of God. I still have much to learn. And that's true, the 99 and the secret name, right? It plays a huge role in the order. 99 plus 1, right?
It does.
It sort of encompasses
No, we're not just
virtually
saying that there's only 99 plus 1 names of God. There's infinite amount. We're just saying that we're working with that wheel, the 99 plus 1, because everything fits in it.
Right, everything does fit in. Almost every experience and
every
energy.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
Yeah.
So fascinating. Yeah, and well, that's interesting that the Korean oil actually is related to Saturn, because Saturn does play a prominent role also in the order as being one of the highest planets, right? So, yeah, fascinating. Wow, this is good. We touched on a lot of interesting things tonight. I really appreciate you coming on, and yeah, we'd love to have you again. And also, Shoti, it would be great if you could come on and talk about.
We should have a little
Islamic
even
occultism,
roundtable discussion one of these days. I think could be really fun. You know,
yeah, absolutely.
Especially get me and Shaki in the same room. There's
yeah, that'd be great.
It's like a stereo effect. That's good stuff.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much. If anyone has any questions or no, and you can you reach Jon at the Violet Gateway and also Al-Hashashin and Sufic Sorcery. So yeah, it's been a very enlightening talk.
You can add me on Facebook, Instagram.
Yep.
All that.
Absolutely.
Not really on Instagram much, but yep, under Jon Vermilion, so everybody can find me.
Wait a minute, how to find out more about the hierarchy of planets? That's another question. I would say really in the courses, right?
Yeah, the courses really, you know, you can get base knowledge, you know, really out and about, sure, but what are you going to do with that information? How does it apply into everything we're working on? You know, why is the planet there? You know, why is it this color? You know, there's so many questions that go to it with the hierarchy of the planets, and then, you know, what happens with that hierarchy? Can it flip?
Right.
You know, that's something to think about. Can that hierarchy flip? Can it spin another, you know? So we're talking about a very multi-dimensional, very non-linear perspectives.
Right.
And that's what we find through the polychronic teachings and the oral traditions of polychronic versus the more linear deviations of monochronic, which the Western mind is generally set for the monochronic perspective.
Well, thank you very much, Jon, and hope to see you again here. And assalamu alaikum, ma salam.